This is perfect, as the Winnipeg Jets have a golden opportunity to acquire the player they need heading into this year's playoffs, as an insider has revealed a new trade target for the Winnipeg Jets, and who it is will shock Jets fans. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Hattrick HQ and Winnipeg Jets Digest, but before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 72% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, so if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening in the NHL and the Winnipeg Jets, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Now today, KC, we have a new trade target that has been revealed by multiple insiders at this point. There's been a lot of chatter about it, and that, of course, to the Winnipeg Jets would be Brock Nelson. There's been some chatter about this for over a year at this point, when he was not a pending UFA and obviously had some term left. Since last year, he's been targeted by the Winnipeg Jets and, linked to the Winnipeg Jets. So what's your initial reaction to this? And we'll get into the article from Frank Saravalli in a second and what the return might be. But what's your reaction to Brock Nelson potentially being a Winnipeg Jet?
Yeah, I really like this. I think this is the ideal fit for the Winnipeg Jets. Getting a two-way guy who can come in immediately, amp up your penalty killing unit a little bit by also adding some goal scoring. I mean, he has 17 goals on the season. I believe he has 18 assists as well. It's a very even contribution from Brock Nelson this season. That's right, man. Good memory on me. 17 goals, 18 assists for 35 points. And yeah, he's been a really solid contributor for this New York Islanders team for a long time. And I feel like he's maybe one of the most underrated players in the NHL, maybe just because he's on the Islanders. But I do think that he could immediately come in, make this team, I would say 5 times better, could even go up to 10 times better because of just what he brings to the penalty kill, what he brings offensively. I think this guy, even though if you've seen that USA team photo shoot where he looked 50 years old, he's still great. He's still a great player.
Yeah, it does look a little old in that Photoshop, or not Photoshop. A lot of people have been asking if it's a Photoshop because of how old he looks in that photo. But no, definitely, he would add so much to this team, and he plays in all situations. Like you mentioned, he's playing a lot of minutes for the Islanders at his age. Obviously, he's not an old man. He's not 50 years old, right? But still playing a lot of minutes for his age as well. And this is an article from yesterday from Frank Saravalli on 6 targets around the NHL and where they may end up. And he did link Brock Nelson to the Winnipeg Jets. And in return, the New York Islanders, and I just want to say this before I name it out, I think this is a great return. I feel like most Jets fans would make this deal because it makes them so much better this year, but there is a catch to it, and we will get to that in a second. But it would be a 2025 first-round pick, Rasmus Kupari, a 2026 third-round pick, and, of course, 50% retained salary because Brock Nelson does make quite a bit of money, $6 million. He is a pending UFA, but this would bring him down to $3 million. Now, again, we talked about it, and you can see it in the article. It just makes sense. They did a deep dive, right, with all the analytics and everything he would bring to the table. It just makes a ton of sense, and the Jets have a bunch of cap space. But KC, I mean, there is a bit of a caveat. He is a pending UFA. So would you make this deal? Do you think that Jets fans would be open to this deal? I do personally. I think it would make them so much better for this year's playoffs. And I mean, the way they've been rolling, adding a piece like this, you could actually go on and win a Stanley Cup with some of the pieces you have. But will you be able to retain his services? I'm not too sure with a lot of the other pending UFAs that they have.
Yeah, it's kind of like we talked about the other day. It's like, you really got to make a decision at this point over this Four Nations break. If you want to win a Stanley Cup this year, do you want to throw it all at the wall and hopefully it sticks and you win something this year? Because if that is the case, you go out, you get your first, you give up your first round pick for a guy in Brock Nelson who is going to make your team immediately better, make your team way better in the playoffs. I think they do this. I think you have to if you're the Jets. Your guys are getting a little bit older, and Scheifele and Kyle Connor's in probably the peak of his career right now. So you need to go out there and do it for these guys. You probably promising these guys behind the scenes that you're going to do anything to win a Stanley Cup. And you've had loyal guys there like Hellebuck and Scheifele and so many that have been wanting to win a cup for this city since they've came back into the NHL. And I think now you have your team fully developed. You have the assets to go out, make the trade that is going to win you a Stanley Cup. So why not do it? If you throw it at the wall and it doesn't stick, yes, it sucks, but I think you have to do it at this point of the Jets franchise.
Yeah, and I think looking at this trade proposal specifically, this, mock trade, if you want to call it that, from Frank Saravalli, a first round pick, it's going to start with that for Brock Nelson anyway. Even with, with the retained salary as well, you're definitely giving up a first round pick. Kapari's been great and very versatile as well, but you're going to have to give up some type of assets in a trade like this as well. In the third round pick, I just don't see that hurting. I feel like the package might actually be a little bit more rich than this, an actual package, but we will see. But in terms of the cap this year, their current cap space is at 8.4 million. Their projected cap space, they might have to wait till the deadline. They have a deadline cap space of $12.5 million. So they can definitely add on his entire contract if they wanted to. If they retain salary, which I think is the move, it's only $3 million against the cap. You can go out and make some other moves because we know that they might want to add a defenseman as well. So there is that on the table too. But when you look at the cap situation moving forward, their projected cap space season after season for the Winnipeg Jets, yes, it looks like a lot, and you could be like, hey, that's perfect, we're going to re-sign Brock Nelson, right? But keep in mind, you also have to sign, and it's looking likely he's going to sign an extension, Gabe Vilardi, who's having a career year, so he's going to demand quite a bit of money as well. Nikolai Ehlers, Dylan Samberg is going to get a very healthy raise because he's been so good this year. Of course, he has all these guys in their contract years. Of course, players always do that. But, they do have quite a bit of cap space in 2025-26. So I can see them, signing Brock Nelson as well because he is older. He's not going to command exactly what he was making this year, right? So, Casey, do you see a projection for what Brock Nelson might make heading into the future? Do you think that the Jets, is this going to be a rental? Will he sign somewhere else in the offseason, or can they keep Brock Nelson if they do trade for him at this trade deadline?
I mean, if they make the right signings, they definitely can keep this guy. I think he's 33 right now.
Yep.
We see players playing into their late 30s these days. I mean, what's Sidney Crosby? He's got to be like 37. Now, Ovechkin's 39. I know those guys are on another level, but if he can keep his body in shape where he can keep going here, he could play into his 35, 36. So maybe you could get him in on a 4-year deal, which will be a lot cheaper. He's at 6 right now. I would maybe chop that in half, maybe even a little bit more. You might get him for a 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 is probably as high as I would go on Brock Nelson, just because you want to keep money available for other players as well. But one thing I did want to bring up before I throw it back to you, Darius, is I'm a Montreal fan, and one thing I wish that Montreal did during Carey Price's unreal play was go all in, so they could try to win Carey Price's Stanley Cup. One of the things I hate about being a Montreal fan is that Carey Price didn't win a cup. And I think Jets fans, at the end of the day, if Connor Hellebuck doesn't win a cup in his whole career, they will look back on it like I am and say, we should have went all in. We should have threw it all at the wall, and hopefully we could have done something with it. So I'm gonna kind of go back to you here. Would you rather see him go all in, or would you rather see him be a little bit reserved?
Well, I've seen a lot of Jets fans, and if you look at the lineup here, saying don't mess with the chemistry, and they're missing a couple players right now. Obviously, Adam Lowry out due to injury, Morgan Barron as well, so keep that in mind. But a lot of people are saying don't mess with the chemistry, but I don't think that's true. To compete with some of the other teams in the West, let alone the East, if you make it to the Stanley Cup final, you're going to need another center. You need a second line center. I think Brock Nelson would bring that to the table. It'd lengthen the rest of the lineup. You could have Ehlers with Adam Lowry, like we've been talking about. They found some chemistry there a little while ago. You could add Brock Nelson. If you add another depth defenseman, now you're looking like a real contender and you can make some noise. I don't think that's really rustling the feathers or anything in terms of chemistry. You're just adding a couple pieces to your lineup. You're not trading away any significant pieces. So I think I agree with you. They have to go all in for the season that they've had, the way that they started this year, capitalize on it this year. They're still hot heading into the trade deadline and obviously the playoffs. So yes, capitalize on the season, try to win. Hellebuck's not getting any younger. He's been one of the best goalies in the league the entire time he's been in the league, right? So you have to capitalize and try and win a Stanley Cup. I just think it's very interesting. I do think that they should absolutely trade for Brock Nelson at this trade deadline, but I do think that, what does it look like going forward? Nikolai Ehlers, is he going to stay a Jet? What does Gabe Vilardi's new contract look like? Dylan Samberg, is he going to make $4 or $5 million? That's a big upgrade from 1.4 that he's making right now. So you have to kind of account for all these things. But the salary cap is going up in a big way every season after season. So we will see what those contracts look like and what Kevin Shoveldayoff has up his sleeve at this year's trade deadline. But we want to hear what you have to say in the comments about Brock Nelson if he should become a Winnipeg Jet. I think it would make them a much better team and a definite contender. They're already a contender, but it would really lengthen that lineup. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything going on in the NHL and the Winnipeg Jets.